Calagian, stye, and other few small topics. So we will revise what is Meibomian gland. So in the previous class also, we have already discussed Meibomian glands. These are present in the tarsus plate. So these are also called the tarsus gland. And these are present in the stroma of tarsus plate, and they are arranged vertically. So they are about 30 to 40 in the upper lid and about 20 to 30 in the lower lid. So these are the modified type of sebaceous gland, and they dock opens at the lid margin. Their secretion constitutes the oily layer of the tear film. So in the tear film, we have also discussed about this, and it forms the lipid layer of the tear film. So Meibomian gland. So if you see over here, you can see the Meibomian gland in the tarsus plate. Similarly, we have a gland of Gis, gland of Mohr. So gland of Gis is also a sebaceous gland which opens into the follicles of the eyelashes. So why I am discussing or revising these glands, the subsequent chapters, subsequent slides, you will be able to know. The glands of Mohl, these are the modified sweat gland, which are situated near the hair follicles, and they opens into the hair follicles or into the duct of Gis gland. So gland of Gis is the sebaceous gland, you remember, and the Mohl is the sweat gland. So they do not open directly into the skin surface as elsewhere. And accessory lacrimal gland, these are the gland of Wolfram and Cross. So these are present near the upper border of the tarsus plate. So when you come to the stye, or which is also called the external hodulum, so it is a acute suppurative inflammations of the last follicles and it associated glands of Gis and Mohl. So we now let's think, where is the Gis and Mohl? What type of glands are these? So when these Gis and Mohls are involved, where is the site of this inflammation? So it is an acute suppurative inflammation. So it's in at the hair follicle. So you will see the follicles around the follicles. There is a pus point, and also there is a inflamed sign. So you know what are the sign of the inflammation. So it is an acute suppurative inflammations. So what are the predisposing factors? Age, it is more common in children and young adults. Though no age is barrier, it can occur at any age, but it's more common in children. And in patients with the eye strains due to the muscle imbalance or refractive error. So these are the common age-associated predisposing factors. Habitual rubbing of the eye or fingering of the lids and nose or chronic blepharitis, diabetes mellitus are usually associated with recurrent stye. So if any patient comes to you with or any guardian complaint of the child is having this type of again and again, then you have to think or ask the history regarding this. Metabolic factor, chronic disability, excessive intake of carbohydrate and alcohol are also a predisposing factor. And causative organism is Staphylococcus aureus. So see, there is a pause point at the line of the hair follicles where the sign of inflammations are there. So what are the clinical features? There is since it is an acute condition, there will be the pain, acute pain associated with swelling of the lid and mild watering and photophobia. There can, when you see the sign, it can be given as a stage of cellulitis or a stage of abscess formation. Stage of cellulitis is characterized by localized form, red, tender swelling at the lid margin associated with marked edema. Usually there is one stye, but occasionally there may be multiple stye also. And stage of abscess formation is characterized by visible pus point on the lid margin in relations to the affected cilia. So you can see over the pus point, and sometimes this pus point may not be there, only the inflamed area can be there at the tip. or at the margin, lid margin. So it can be the both stages of the stye. So what is the treatment? You go for the hot compression 2 to 3 times a day, and these are very useful, especially in case of the stage of cellulitis stage. Evacuations of the pus would be done by epilations of that follicles that involve the cilia, or when the pus point is formed. So surgical incision is required rarely for a large abscess, and antibiotic eye drop 3 to 4 times a day, and eye ointment at the bedtime should be applied to control the infections, and systemic anti-inflammatory and analgesic which relieves for the pain and reduce the edema, and systemic antibiotics should be used for the early control of infections. In recurrent stye, try to find out and treat the associated predisposing conditions. So which we have discussed about the associated predisposing condition, we will ask in the history and try to solve those problems. So hot compressions, antibiotics, and if it is this, then you can just epilate the cilia, the pus will drain by itself, or if it is a little big one and if the abscess has to be drained, then always under the coverage of the systemic and topical antibiotic, you better advise the patient to come for the next day, or admit the patient and then drain the next day. So under the good control of the antibiotic. So it is the most common complication or most fearful complication is orbital cellulitis. So always thinking in mind about the orbital cellulitis, you should treat this condition. So another common condition is the Calagian, which is also tarsus or the meibomian cyst, and it is a chronic non-infective lipogranulomatous inflammations of the meibomian gland. Whereas what is the stye? You will be asked in exam what is the difference between the stye and Calagian. So stye is the acute suppurative inflammations of the gland of Gis and mole, whereas this is the chronic non-infective lipogranulomatous inflammations of meibomian gland. So this is also called as the lead lump. It is the commonest lead lump. So you can see the swelling over here at the, but it is, see the eye is quiet, it's not red, and no any other sign of inflammation. See, a lump is there at the lid. Predisposing factors are similar to that of the Hordeolum externum and pathogenicity. So what is Calagian? All of you are here? Okay, what is Calagian? So it is in the tarsus plate. So it is also called the tarsus cyst or tarsus lead lump. So it is a chronic non-infective lipogranulomatous inflammations of meibomian gland. So the predisposing factors are same as that of the external Hordeolum, and it's usually in the pathogenesis there is a predisposing infections, and as the gradually the organism there is a colonizations which may be the low virulence type of organisms, and the infiltrations of the wall with the of the duct and which are blocked, and consequently there is the retention of the secretions in the gland causing its more enlargement. The pent-up and extravagation secretions that is acts like an irritant and excite a non-infective lipogranulomatous inflammation of the blocked meibomian gland and the surrounding tissues. So symptoms is these are the painless. Always the difference between the stye is a painful condition, it is a acute inflammations, whereas Calagian is a painless condition, it is a chronic lipogranulomatous inflammation. So acute and chronic. This is a painless swelling in the eyelid, gradually increasing in size, is the main presenting symptoms, and mild heaviness in the lid may be felt with moderate class Calagian, and blurred vision may occur usually due to the induced astigmatism by a very large calagion. And watering may be also occurs sometimes due to the, if there is a large calagion at the lower punctum, then that will cause a more pulling effect resulting in eversion of the punctum, so that can be the watering. And so sign nodules is noted slightly away from the lead margin, which is firm, hard and non-tender on palpations. So upper lid is involved more commonly because the more number of the meibomian glands are present at the upper lid. So always the calagion can be at both the upper and the lower lid, but as the glands are more in the upper lid, so you will see frequently the calagion in the upper lid. So upper lid is involved more commonly than the lower lid, probably because of the fact that the upper lid contains more meibomian gland. Frequently, multiple calagion can also be seen. So many patients says that, many people says that it is recurrent, but it cannot be the recurrent. Once you the site of the meibomian gland can again be blocked, resulting in a calagion formation. So as a number of the glands are more, so there can be the multiple calagion. Reddish purple area where the calagion usually point is seen on the palpable conjunctiva after the eversion of the lid, and projections of the main block of the swelling on the skin side may be seen really instead of conjunctival side, and marginal calagion occurring occasionally may present at the small reddish gray nodules on the lid margin. So what are the clinical course and complications? Complete spontaneous resolutions may occur rarely. If it is a very small, then only you can see a complete resolution. Otherwise, always you have to do the incision and curatives. It is a slow increasing in size and is often seen, and eventually it may become very large. Fungating mass of the granulation tissue may be formed occasionally when the lesion bursts in the conjunctival side. Secondary infection may lead to formation of hordeolum internum also. So calcifications may occur, which is rare, and malignant change into the meibomian gland, that is the adenocarcinoma, may be seen occasionally in the elderly people. So if calagion is in the elderly people, or if it is recurrent, then you have to think of the malignant change also. So these are the different clinical course of the calagion. It can go into the resolutions, it can increase in size gradually, it can burst into the fungating mass to the skin size, or the calcifications occurs, or sometimes in elderly people it can change into the malignancy. So conservative treatment, it is a small, soft and recent calagion. It is self-resolutions is held by the conservative management. So you advise for the hot fermentations and topical antibiotic eye drops or oral anti-inflammatory drugs. Intralesion injections of the long-acting steroids, that is a triamcinolone, is reported to cause the resolutions in about 50% of the cases, especially in small and soft calagion of recent onset, located near the punctum where incision and curatives may cause damage. So if there is a small, then you just inject the intralesion triamcinolone, so it will resolve by itself. And if it is in the near the punctum also, then you cannot do the incision because you may destroy the punctum. So at this time also you can inject the triamcinolone. So by injecting the triamcinolone, the side effect is that just you see the whitish area at that site for a long period of the time. Otherwise you can go for it. Incision and curatives is the conventional and effective treatment for the calagion, but the effective treatment is only the incision and curatives. So this is how you put the calagion gland from the inside conjunctival part, and this is a calagion. You just give the vertical incision, and with the help of the calagion scoop, you scoop out the lipogranulomatous material. Surface anesthesia is obtained by installations of xylocaine drop in the eye, and the lead in the region of the calagion is infiltrated with 2% of xylocaine solution. An incision is made with a sharp blade should be vertical on the conjunctival side to avoid the injury to the other meibomian duct, and horizontal on the skin side to have the invisible scar. Content are cureties out with the help of the Calagian scoop, and carbolic acid cautery followed by neutralization with a methylated spirit should be performed in the cavity to avoid the recurrence. Patching of the eye should be done after instilling the antibiotic eye ointment for about 6 to 12 hours. And post-operative treatment to decrease discomfort and prevent infection should be given in the form of hot fermentations, antibiotic eye drops, oral anti-inflammatory, analgesics, and oral antibiotic for 4 to 5 days. So diathermy in the marginal calagian is better treatment by the diathermy, and oral tetracycline should be given as a prophylaxis if there is a recurrent calagian, especially if associated with acne or seborrhea. So in recurrent calagian, malignancy should also be ruled out. So internal hordulam, it is a suppurative inflammations of the meibomian gland associated with blockage of duct. Predisposing factors are similar to the hordulam externum. Causative mechanism is hordulam internum occurs as the primary staphylococcal infections of the meibomian gland or due to the secondary infections of calagian. So internal hordulam is a suppurative inflammation of meibomian gland due to the blockage of the duct. So you have to know how to separate the calagian and the internal hordulam. Calagian is a chronic lipogranulomatous inflammation of meibomian gland, whereas internal hordulam is a suppurative inflammations of the meibomian gland. So this is about this internal. So over here, the acute pain associated with the swelling of the lid, mild watering, and photophobia is there. The symptoms are similar to that of the hordulam externum, except that the pain is more intense due to the swelling being embedded deeply in the dense fibrous tissue. So there is more pain than that of the stye. So it is a localized form, red tender swelling of the lid associated with marked edema. On examination, hordulam internum can be differentiated from externum by the fact that the point of maximum tenderness and swelling is away from the lid margin. So always you notice the lid margin, that the lid margin, if it is away from the lid margin, then it is a hordulam internum and it is not the stye. Stye or hordulam externum stye, the hordulam externum is at the lid margin, and the pause point usually on the tarsus conjunctiva seen as the yellowish area uninverting the lid and not on the root of the cilia. In case of the hordulam externum, you will see the pause point at the root of the cilia. And one of the treatment of the hordulam externum is you elevate or epilate that cilia. Whereas in case of the hordulam internum, it is away, pause point is away from the lid margin and not at the site of the cilia, root of the cilia. So sometimes the pause point may be seen at the opening of the involved meibomian gland or rarely on the skin also. So treatment of the hordulam externum, except where the pus is formed, it should be drained by the vertical incision from the tarsus conjunctiva. So the treatment is same as that of the stye. So you start with hot fermentation, you give the topical and systemic antibiotics and analgesics for the relieving of the pain and swelling, and except that the difference in the treatment part is in case of the hordulam, this externum, you give the you just epilate the cilia, and if not possible you have to give the incision. Whereas in case of this hordulam internum, you have to just drain like that of the calagian. Now we will be discussing about the simniferan, ankyloblepharon, phimosis, and blepharospasm, which are also a common topic in a day-to-day practice. So what is simniferan? It is simply the adhesions of the lead to the globe. As a result of the adhesions between the bulbal and palpable conjunctiva. So the adhesion of bulbal and palpable conjunctiva is a seminiferon, which subsequently lead to the adhesion of the lead to the globe. So this, see over here, you can see the adhesion of this bulbal conjunctiva with the palpable conjunctiva. So in case there are common causes are chemical burn, thermal burn, membranous conjunctivitis, ocular pemphigoid, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, post-operative cases, and trachoma. So over here, this is a more severe form where you can see it is attached to and coming to the cornea also, adhesion. So these are the etiologic of the seminiferon. So band of the fibrous tissues are formed and stretching between the lead and the globe. The band may be narrow or broad, and cornea is also involved in severe cases. It can be the anterior band, it can be posterior band, or it can be the total seminiferon. So the anterior band limited to the anterior part and not involving the fornix. So you just see the palpable and bulbar conjunctiva, but the fornix is free. And the posterior band is obliterating the fornix, and total seminiferon where the leads are completely plastered against the globe and leaving the small fixed palpable aperture. Sometimes in the case of the total seminiferon, you will not be able to see the globe also. It's very difficult, and you have to remove the seminiferon, and it is a raw area. So it's a high chance of adhesions again. So again, repeated bracing, put something there, the gauze or that with betadine, and again you can remove at least 2 or 3 times bracing per day. So the treatment is very difficult. So symptoms are pain and redness, watering, diplopia, and cosmetic disfigurement. Sign, there is a sign of exposure, restrictions of ocular movement. So visible fibrotic band is there, you can see it. And obliteration of the fornix also, you will not be able to see the fornix. So over here, see the seminiferon, total globe is not seen over here. The eye cornea is not seen in case of. Over here, this part is involved, this part is free. Prevention is most important. Sweeping of the glass. We have to remove the seminiferon by sweeping the glass rod coated with the ointment and around the upper and lower fornix, and scleral contact cell fitting can be done to until it is not healed. And if you don't have the glass rod, what you will do is that with the help of the thermometer which you have in your OPD or daily practice, with the help of the opposite side of that glass side of the thermometer also, you can just sweep it out. Well established, if there is a small band, just excise the band. If it is extensive, radial excision of the scar conjunctival tissue, mucous membrane graft to cover the bare area, and mucous membrane is taken from the upper fornix of the opposite eye or from the buccal mucosa. Prevention or recurrence of the adhesions after the operations by therapeutic contact lens by the scleral cell for at least 2 months, and high dose of steroids, oral and systemic, is helpful to prevent the formation of excessive granulation tissues. Another condition is the ankyloblepharon, which is a partial or complete fusion of the eyelids by the wave of. So you have seen the wave of the birds. So like that wave of the birds can be seen at the lid. So you will see either the complete closure of the lid or closure at one point, partial complete closure. So like this tag, you can see the skin tag like this. So this is over here like a wave, it will be seen. That is the ankyloblepharon. So it is partial or complete fusion of the eyelids, and these waves can usually be opened with a scissor, where the waves is clamped for a few seconds to maintain the hemostasis. Then we will clamp the wave and just we will cut with the help of the scissor. To prevent the re-adhesions at the site of the operation, the skin and conjunctiva should be partially apposed with the suture. So, more severe form of the ankyloblepharon that appears in conjunction with cranial facial deformities may require the extensive reconstructive surgery. So another condition, congenital condition, is a blepharophimosis. So it is a rare and it is autosomal dominant congenital disorder. So over here you will see the number of the things. So sign, there will be the moderate to severe symmetrical ptosis. So by this time you know what is ptosis. It is a drooping of the upper eyelids where the poor libido function is there. So there is a ptosis. There is a short horizontal palpable aperture. So this aperture is very short. Telecanthus or epicanthus inversus means this is wide, and lateral ectropion is there in the lower lid. So you will see the ectropion in the lower lid, and poorly developed nasal bridge. So this nasal bridge is not developed, and hypoplasia of the superior orbital rim. So there is a hypoplasia of the superior orbital rim. So you will see in this picture, you can see the telecanthus. This is a epicanthus, lateral ectropion is there, and this aperture is also short. So here you can see is initially involved the corrections of the epicanthus and telecanthus, followed a few months later by the bilateral frontalis suspension. You will do the surgery. And it is also important to treat amblyopia, which is present in about 50% of the cases. So what is amblyopia? We will discuss later on. Just you will see the thing that it is a lazy eye. So blepharospasm, which is also a common topic, and it can be due to the various reasons, but it comes frequently to you in a medical OPD also. So, but you should know what is blepharospasm. So when we will discuss the facial nerve also, again it will come, this topic will again come. So there are two types of blepharospasm. Essential blepharospasm, which is a very benign, and other is the hemifacial spasm. So what is the blepharospasm? You see the eye is healthy sometime, but it looks, it's closed. It's not a ptosis. Benign essential blepharospasm. It's a benign essential blepharospasm is a bilateral focal dystonia that affects about 300 of every 1 million people, and the condition is characterized by increased blinking and involuntary spasm of the orbicularis, oculi, proteus, and corrugator muscles. So the spasm generally starts as a mild twitching and progress over time to the forceful contraction. So what happens? There is a frequent blinking of the eye, involuntary blinking of the eye due to the spasm of orbicularis oculi muscle. So initially it starts with the twitching of the eye. So sometimes we also have the twitching of the eye. So similarly, that twitching gradually progress and there will be the forceful contraction. The involuntary episodes of the forced blinking or contraction may severely limit the patient's ability to drive, read, or perform the activities on daily living. So gradually, though the visual acuity can be normal, but gradually due to the blinking of this, the patient will be unable to drive, then read, then other activities also it will happen. With time, this condition will be progressed and leads into the blindness. So what is the etiology of this blepharospasm? It's still unknown, but it is probably of the central origin in the basal ganglia. So women are more common than the men, and age is, its onset occurs at the 40 years. So if the diagnosis is difficult, clinically neuroimaging is required. So we go for the MRI. Then what is the treatment in our day-to-day practice? Or sometimes what will be the differential diagnosis? The common differential diagnosis of this is dry eye syndrome. So in the severe dry eye also patient will complain of the frequent blinking. So that has to be ruled out. and other systemic associated after doing the neuroimaging should be ruled out, and you go for the medical and surgical treatment. So botulism toxin injection. So the treatment of the choice is a botulism toxins, where the repeated periodic injections of the botulinum toxin type A, Botox, is a treatment of the choice. But over here, this problem with this, it is for the very short duration, and it is very costly. So it is a neurotoxins derived from the Clostridium botulinum. So botulinum toxins type A block the receptor site in the neuromuscular junction, which inhibits the release of the acetylcholine and thus result in the chemical denervations and localized muscle paralysis. So it can also be thought that this due to the disturbance in the neuromuscular transmission mechanism has led to this conditions. But what is the aggravating factors, it's still not known. This injection is typically effective but temporarily, but it's a effective. Botulinum toxin is very effective, but it is only the temporary measures. Onset of the action is in 2 to 3 days, and average peak effect lasts for about 2 weeks following the injections, and it lasts for about 3 to 4 months. So what are the complications regarding this injection? It is a bruising, means you will see the bluish area at the injection site. Blepharotosis can occur. Ectopion, it can occur. Diplopia, lag of thalamus, dryness, superior punctate keratitis. And these reactions are transient and typically result from the spread of the toxin to the adjacent muscle. Other modalities of the treatment is the surgical myomectomy, removal of the orbicularis fibers in the upper and lower eyelid, includes the orbital as well as palpable portion of the muscle if botulinum therapy is unresponsive. So sometimes it works. Surgical myomectomy, so if you remove the orbicularis muscles at the lower and upper and lower lid, at the palpable and orbital part of the orbicularis oculi, then it can be treated. So complications over here again, the lag of thalamus and the chronic lymphedema. Surgical ablations of the facial nerve, that is facial nerve dissection. And others are the muscle relaxants and sedatives, and marginal. Other types of treatment like marginal are no benefit in the treatment of blepharospasm. And what is the other type of the blepharospasm is a hemifacial spasm. So hemifacial spasm is characterized by intermittent, synchronous, gross contractures of the entire side of the face, and it's rarely bilateral. So always you can see in some patient the half of the side of the face there is a chronic contracture. So intermittent, synchronous, gross contractures of the entire side of the face, and unlike the essential blepharospasm, the spasm are present during the sleep. So hemifacial spasm is often associated with ipsilateral facial nerve weakness, and in the vast majority of the cases, the causes of the hemifacial spasm is the vascular compressions of the facial nerve at the brainstem. So which is seen by doing the MRI. So history of the Bell's palsy, trauma is important over here. So we will ask the history if there is any Bell's palsy or any history of trauma, and neurological examination is done, and MRI helps to rule out the other lesion like pontine glioma, which may be the cause in 1% of the cases in case of hemifacial spasm. So the treatment is neurosurgical decompressions of the facial nerve and periodic injections of the botulinum toxin is there. So this is a treatment. These are the slides for you for the leads. So by By all this topic, covering all this topic, I have completed the lead. So any problem in the lead? Please say me if any problem are there in the lead. So please reply to me. And from the next class, so I think sir has covered you conjunctiva and cornea. So I will start lens or glaucoma. So if sir will start lens, I will start glaucoma in the next class. So I think better I will start glaucoma, then if not, then lens. So my walk is over about the lead. So how much you have covered in the lead? How much you have read in the lead? Okay. How many hours you will read per day? You are a 4th year student, so all of you are staying in the home comfortably, safely, so we hope. And how many hours you study? The main thing is that you have to study. How many hours you are studying total, and how many hours you are studying ophthalmology? Who is this writing? एउटा भाइले 10 मिनेटमा किताब मेमोराइज गरिसक्यो. I am asking you some questions, and this is not the time for the nonsense discussion. Who has given the fake account, ma'am? You only might have given the password and all. Otherwise, how this fake number will come, they will get and they will come over here. Okay, over here, wow, what is your homework is when you come to the practical class, I need a nice note about the lead. So I will see from starting from the inflammatory condition of the lead, anomalies of the lead conditions, and about the all the lead ectropion, entropion, lag of thalamus, which we have discussed. I need a good note in your copy. So you will make a good note and show it to me so that I can give you a bonus marks in your practical posting. So I will also see. Thank you, everyone.